Now next up, we're going to cover metabolic fuel use. Now you may see a question on step 1 which asks which fuel source is used during certain types of exercise, as well as the fasting and fed state, or even in starvation. So first off, let's create a figure to give us an idea of which fuel sources are used during exercise, and how long they last. In the first few seconds of exercise, stored ATP as well as creatine phosphate is used to provide energy. And after a couple of seconds, legitimately about 2 seconds, the stored ATP becomes depleted. And after about 10 seconds, you end up burning through all your creatine phosphate. And also during these first few seconds, anaerobic metabolism, as you see here, and aerobic metabolism begin to ramp up. And glancing down at our curve here, after about 1 minute, our anaerobic metabolism has burned out, and we're running off energy produced by aerobic metabolism. Now this curve here shows us the overall performance line. And notice how, as time goes on, the body relies on different processes for energy, and as a result, overall performance goes down. Now we're going to discuss how the body reacts during the fed as well as fasting and starvation states. In these scenarios, the priorities are to supply enough glucose to the brain as well as red blood cells so that the body can maintain basic functions as well as to preserve protein to prevent muscle breakdown. So let's create a scenario. Let's say you decide to binge on a few cheeseburgers, and after the third cheeseburger with large fries, you step on the scale and you realize you've gained a few pounds. Now after this, you decide that you're not going to eat for 5 days to help lose some weight. Now, in the fed state, immediately after eating those cheeseburgers, insulin is used to stimulate storage of lipids and proteins and glucose into cells, as you can see here. Assuming plenty of oxygen is also available, glycolysis as well as aerobic respiration will occur. Now, after a few hours, the body will enter a temporary fasting period, and this occurs normally between meals where the body starts to produce glucagon. Now, what exactly does glucagon do here? Glucagon causes the body to use fuel reserves to maintain bodily functions. Hepatic glycogenolysis is the main way that the body refuels after fasting between meals. This is also supplemented by gluconeogenesis, in which about 90% occurs in the liver and about 10% occurs within the kidneys. Also ongoing at this time is fatty acid metabolism. Now, unfortunately, glycogen stores only last about 1 day, and this is assuming that you're not being physically active while you're fasting. Now remember, we ate 3 large cheeseburgers, and now we're not going to eat for 5 straight days. Initially, our hepatic glycogenolysis will supply the body with glucose, but after the first day of fasting, you enter a starvation phase, in which you must use other fuel sources to make ATP. And like we saw before, glucose levels are maintained by hepatic glycogenolysis. And now after most of the hepatic glycogen has been consumed, the body must get creative here and find alternative sources for energy. And in this case, adipose tissue will start releasing free fatty acids for beta oxidation. This means that the muscle as well as liver will switch its fuel source from glucose to fatty acids. And it can use these free fatty acids as well as lactate and alanine to supply the body with more glucose. And this is especially important for your red blood cells, since they can't use the fatty acids or ketones. Now why can't red blood cells use fatty acids or ketones? There you go. Remember that our red blood cells lack organelles and therefore lack mitochondria. And due to this, they can only use glucose through the process of glycolysis to produce ATP. Now after 3 days of starvation, ketone bodies become the main source of energy for the brain as well as the heart. During this phase, about 2/3 of the energy used is from ketones, where about 1/3 of the energy is from glucose. Now since these ketone bodies are made from fatty acids, the amount of stored adipose tissue determines survival. And this is assuming that you have access to water as well as other important minerals and vitamins. Now once adipose stores are depleted, vital proteins are degraded from muscle as well as other organs to make energy. And once you're to this point, it doesn't take long to result in organ failure as well as death. Well, alright, that's going to wrap up metabolic fuel use. See you in the next video.